Rain-slicked concrete, sodium vapor light bleeding orange across a parking garage ramp. The shot is chest-high. A body-worn camera shakes as a female voice steadies her breath. A splash of shoe in a shallow puddle, and then a wheeze that doesn't sound like the rain. A man's hand is splayed open on the cold ground, fingers twitching, palm up like a question nobody answers fast enough. Central, 24 Paul 7 on scene, the officer says, voice strained but controlled. Adult male, late 30s, labored respirations, responsive to pain only. Send EMS, priority. She kneels, rain ticking on her duty belt, a halo of plastic reflecting into the lens. This is the beginning, according to the incident report time-stamped 02:17 a.m. The officer's name is Elena Ruiz. On the concrete, the man breathes through gritted teeth, breath thin and panicked. He tries to move but can't. His hoodie is dark with water. His face is darker with exhaustion. No blood is visible at first, just the unsettled stillness of a person starting to slip. "Sir? Hey, I'm Elena. I'm with the police," she says. "I'm going to keep you with me, okay? Can you squeeze my hand?" A pause, the camera catching her gloved hand finding his. He squeezes, weakly. His eyes flutter. He tries to speak. The microphone catches fragments over rain and the rattle of a loose sign somewhere on the next level. "Garage," he says. "We're in the garage," she answers. "You're not alone. Help is on the way." He shakes his head a fraction. Hobson. Pink. "Say it again?" Elena leans closer, near enough that the lens fogs at the edges. "Pink backpack," he breathes. "Hobson. Garage. They..." The last syllable scrapes and breaks. Elena glances at the ramp's empty curve like a mouth swallowing light. On the far wall, a billboard for a podcast glows fuzzy in the rain. Like and subscribe for more stories that challenge prejudice and celebrate courage. It's a sentence that feels wrong here, like laughter in a chapel. She doesn't see it. Or maybe she does, but right now all she sees is a chest rising too shallow, too far apart. Elena to Central, subject semi-conscious, possible internal injuries, starting airway support. She tilts his chin gently, counts breaths. "Stay with me," she says. "Stay. What's your name?" He tries again. The camera hears a syllable that could be anything. Ja or Dar. But the rain swallows it. He stares past her at the dark like he expects someone to come back. According to the report, 2 additional units arrive at 02:21 a.m., tires squeegeeing water as they pull up. At 02:23, sirens Doppler into the garage and slide to a stop. Paramedics spill out, all business and blue nitrile, and the next several minutes are cables, questions, vital signs, and the slow, relentless negotiation of time. As an investigative reporter, I've watched this moment 100 times from the body cam file that came to me on a zip drive I did not ask to receive. I rewound and paused and played forward, each frame evidence that was there all along. According to the file properties, the footage is unedited. The time code is consistent. The weather records line up with the rain. They get him onto a board, secure him. One paramedic murmurs, "Soft tissue, maybe blunt force. Doesn't look like a fall pattern." Another says, "Could be medical." Elena hears "could be" and nods like someone trying to stay in the pocket of what she can prove and what she just feels is wrong. He looks at her one more time as his face goes gray in the flicker from the unit's interior lights. "Pink. Backpack," he says. It's barely a whisper. "Hobson." "What's Hobson?" Elena asks, voice tight. Nobody answers. The paramedics lift. The world narrows to straps and wheels and a siren's rise that makes your heart start running even if your legs can't. According to the hospital intake sheet, he flatlined at 02:39 a.m. They brought him back. According to the third page, he coded again at 03:05. At 03:17, they stopped. He had a name by then, Darius L. Cole, 33, black male, last known address, a subsidized housing building 4 blocks from the garage. Pockets emptied yielded a bus pass, one key, and a transit card worn smooth by hands that ride and don't stop knocking at doors. No wallet, no ID. It didn't matter to the machine that fills a chest with air. It matters after. I'm Maya Chen. In my line of work, someone is always saying something and someone else is always trying to make sure we don't hear. This story began where most of mine do, with a message in my inbox that should have gone to someone else. No subject line, no greeting, just a link to a cloud folder and one sentence. He said what he said. Listen. I clicked. The cloud held 3 files, body camera footage, an incident report, and a still photo of a little girl's pink backpack hanging on a hook, small as a heartbeat. Police hold a morning briefing after any in-custody death or officer-involved incident. This wasn't either. It was a man found in a garage. At 10 a.m., a spokesperson stood at a lectern and said words that make a shape like closure. We are investigating all possibilities. There were no visible traumatic injuries. At this time, there is no evidence of foul play. According to a journalist's notebook, a reporter from Channel 6 asked, "Confirmed overdose?" The spokesperson said, "We cannot confirm any cause at this time." The word overdose hung in the air anyway, the way words like that do. Overdose turns a person into a category. Category turns a category into a statistic. Statistics can be rearranged. I watched the body cam. I replayed those words: garage, Hobson, pink backpack. The garage was obvious. Hobson was a name with gravity in this city. A developer turned councilman whose smile in campaign photos looked like it had learned to hold still. The pink backpack could be anything: a code, a last memory, a color in a dark place. I filed my first request for records at 10:43 a.m. All reports, calls, and communications related to the 0217 incident at the Gramercy Street parking structure, any closed-circuit footage, any references to Hobson. Redaction is an art form some agencies love more than oil paintings. But every painting starts with a line. At noon, I drove to the building listed as Darius's last known address, a red brick slab built in the 1970s, rails flaking paint the color of old gum. A woman with weary eyes and a laundry basket told me she didn't know him. Specially, she said, "We all know each other in a way, but not in the way that helps when the police come." A teenager on the stoop pointed me to the back where the community board sagged under flyers. Piano lessons, free clinic, missing cat. A pink backpack in a photo with Kraft Night glue smears said, "Lost, belonged to Jem. If found, please leave with Ms. Nina in 3B. I knocked on 3B. The same weary eyes, different face, opened up. Ms. Nina worked overtime at a rehabilitation center and wore a scrub top with cartoon bears. On the table behind her sat a lunch packed into 2 separate containers for 2 separate shifts. The pink backpack hung from a hook on the door. "I'm not the police," I said. "I'm a reporter." "They took him," she said, without asking who. "He was on his way here. He was always on his way here." She pulled the door wider. Jem sat cross-legged on the couch with an art book, coloring a house where all the windows were open. In the photo on the backpack's flyer stapled to the board, the backpack still had a unicorn keychain. Now it had a frayed ribbon and a scuff that looked like a cloud. "Darius was my brother," she said. "Not by blood, by choosing all the times nobody else did." She nodded at the backpack. "He left it here last week after he took Jem to school. I told him to take it with him. He said it made him look approachable." She laughed once, small and sad. "He had ideas." "My condolences," I said, and meant it, because the air in that apartment felt like what condolences try to do but never can. "You're going to write something?" she asked. "I'd like to, but I need to know who he was so the story is about him, not just what happened to him." I looked at Jem. "Only if you're okay with it." Jem didn't look up from her page. She said, "He taught me to count the buses by their sounds." And then she colored the house a shade of yellow I didn't know could exist. Nina said, "He worked nights. Rideshare mostly, sometimes deliveries. He wanted to take his EMT test again. He failed once. He didn't quit." She touched the backpack strap. "He would come by at weird hours because of his schedule. Last night he texted he'd be late, but he was coming. Then nothing." "Did he ever mention Hobson?" I asked. She went still. "Is that a person?" "City council, real estate." Her face tightened like a muscle clenching. "That man's name has been on papers in this building since I was a kid, always promising to fix something. He fixed our view by building a parking garage." She laughed again, hard this time. "Why?" "He said it on tape. His last words included it." I looked at the backpack. "Can I ask about this?" She lifted it carefully, like it was either going to break or fly. "He said if anything happened, I should look in the front pocket. And then he said I was being dramatic, and we both laughed, and then we stopped laughing." She opened the zipper. Inside, a stack of folded pages, a cheap USB drive, and a spiral notebook with stickers of planets flaking off. "I'm not trying to take anything," I said, "but I'd like to look. We can do it together." She laid the papers on the table one by one. Printouts of emails, a copy of a complaint form addressed to the city's Office of Public Integrity, incomplete. A map of the downtown area with red circles around the parking garage, a string of alleys, the homeless shelter, the train depot, the clinic. Next, we opened the spiral notebook. Darius's handwriting was neat, like someone wanting to be understood. April 12. Callback, response times. April 19. Triton EMS subcontracts, confirm. Laws. April 25th. Security guys at Gramercy, van no plates. Talk to Mr. Lewis. Don't go alone. "Who is Mr. Lewis?" I asked. Nina tapped the map where the garage lived. "He cleans there at night. He and Darius played checkers when it was slow." She glanced at the USB drive. "He said he had numbers nobody was looking at because they didn't want to." I turned the drive in my hand like it had a little hum not in my ears. My recorder was already on out of habit. "Can I take this?" I asked. "I'll copy it and bring it back." Nina looked at Jem, who was drawing a girl standing on top of a parking garage holding a flag that said, "Don't be scared." "If you tell the truth," she said, "the whole thing." "I don't know the whole thing yet," I said. "Find it," she said. The night janitor has a name and a locker with a miracle of neatness inside. Mr. Lewis was in his late 60s, with a face like it's seen all kinds of jokes and only laughed at the necessary ones. In the staff room of the garage, between a drink machine with a flickering 7-segment display and a bulletin board drooping under notices about training that never came, he drank coffee that had cooked too long. "You're with the news?" he asked when I introduced myself. He looked at my card like it might bite him, and then put it in his pocket anyway. "I'm with whoever listens," I said. "According to a notebook, you knew Darius." "I knew him as much as a man knows another man he sees between midnight and dawn," he said. "That's sometimes more than folks know who sleep next to each other." He stared at the table. "They said overdose. People love to put a word to something so they can put it away." "Did you see anything last night?" He inhaled slow. "They don't let me see much." "See these glasses," he said, tapping frames scraped enough to be frosted. "But I heard. Sound carries in that place like a secret doesn't." He gestured towards the concrete around us. "About 1, maybe a little after, I hear a van drive in the wrong way. No engine, no rattle like pipes hanging down. Just a quiet that's not right for a machine. Electric, maybe. They parked on level 3, just out of camera range, because the cameras on this level work and the ones up there don't. You get to know what's broken and what's supposed to be. 2 men, boots on concrete, didn't talk like working men, talked like men who practice not leaving fingerprints. What did they do? He rubbed the coffee cup between his palms like warming a little stone. I didn't see. I heard a scuffle, like a shuffle of feet, and a breath caught wrong. Then I heard a sound like a box hitting the ground. Then nothing. I went toward it. I'm not stupid, but I'm not blind either. He looked at me. Then I heard one of them on the phone. Yeah, garage is clear. Hobson's people will like it. Got one left to move. Move, like we furniture. He smiled without humor. I stood behind a pillar like I was put there to hold something up. Waited till they left. Then I found him. He tried to get up and couldn't. Said he was cold. I put my jacket over him. I called, but the 911 lady told me to stay on the line, and I stayed, and then I hung up because sometimes a voice on the phone is not the hand on your shoulder you need. That's when your officer came. Did you tell the police what you heard? I told them. They wrote when I started talking, and they stopped when I said the part about Hobson. They said maybe I misheard. My hearing's not great, they said. My ears work for what matters. He pushed his cup away. When I said van, they said what color? I said gray. They said how do you know colors when the light is like soup? I said some things you just know. Do the cameras work? He snorted. The cameras work when they're pointed at who they want to watch. I requested the footage anyway. If there's one thing I know, it's that broken cameras sometimes fix themselves when they realize someone's checking. Then I walked the levels Mr. Lewis pointed at, memorized the blind spots, the curves, the places the echo turned into a whistle. On level 3, a dark patch on the concrete looked like it had been washed. Not blood. Sometimes you just know the difference between wet and what used to be something. Back at my office, the USB drive plugged in with a reluctance that made my laptop hum unhappy. It held spreadsheets, dates, times, addresses, columns labeled Response, Arrive, Transport. A second sheet was titled Adjusted. The differences were small, measured in minutes, sometimes seconds, but they added up. According to city contract terms, the private EMS company, Triton, earned bonuses for average response times under 7 minutes in the urban core. According to the adjusted sheet, those averages were achieved on paper by moving the first contact time back a little, the on-scene time forward a little, the transport start time a hair. Enough hairs and you cover a crime. There were more files, PDF scans of emails between dispatch supervisors, subject lines like performance, opportunities, and kickoff. Words like that, when they show up in context like this, mean the opposite of what they mean in the world. One email stood out, from a person whose name would matter later. It said, "With upcoming activation around Gramercy, ensure minimal visible presence during clearances. Coordination with Council's office ongoing. Keep times tight for reporting. Can we massage when calls overlap?" The sign-off was initials, AN. According to LinkedIn, AN was Anthony Nash, liaison between Triton and the city's public safety office. According to a photo on the mayor's Facebook page, Nash had stood behind a ribbon with Councilman Hobson 2 months prior, smiling at the future where a derelict block would become a high-rise with condos whose windows would never think about the people downstairs. I called Triton's media contact. She said they pride themselves on service excellence and would not comment on specific incidents due to privacy and respect for the deceased. I asked about the emails. She said she did not know what I was talking about. I emailed screenshots. She went offline. A voicemail waited for me at 5:12 p.m., voice thin and scared, and trying to be the opposite. "Is this Maya? You don't know me. Don't use this number. I saw the post about Darius. I work nights. I can't say names. But he was right, the times. We, some guys there, did what they asked. Because if you ask a man to reach for a job and then snatch it away, he will learn to grab what his boss's boss wants and stop asking why. I didn't, not all the time. He was watching us. He wanted to fix it. The pink backpack was not a joke. It had the flash drive, because who would steal a little girl's backpack? breath. If anyone asks, I didn't call. The voice clicked off like a light. The next morning's paper called it a tragedy. A photo of the garage with caution tape, a quote from a council staffer. Our hearts go out to the family. The councilman has always prioritized safety. The word hearts stretches like gum. My inbox filled with advice. Some of it was spelled right. At 8:03 a.m., my phone rang with a blocked number. "This is Elena," the voice said. "Officer Ruiz. I think I need a journalist." We met in a coffee shop that thinks newspapers live in racks and the ceiling is supposed to be this high because that's how stories sound when they settle. She was younger than her cuffs made her look, with dark hair braided into compliance, and eyes like she's learned she will have to prove she's not what whoever is in the room thinks she is. I know that look. It's muscle memory by now. "I filed my report," she said, low. "It says possible blunt trauma. It says possible assault. It says subject mentioned Hobson and pink backpack. It also says I rendered aid and then EMS transported. It doesn't say a supervisor told me to file under medical. It doesn't say someone told me to stop chasing words I only think I heard." "You think someone's going to change your report," I said. "I think words get massaged when they want to become statistics," she said. "I think someone is going to say I'm a rookie who misheard a dying man. I think they will tell me rookies get romantic about things. I think they will tell me to file, to let it go, to be a team player." She stared at her coffee like it might read this for her. "I shouldn't be talking to you." "Why are you?" She looked like she was choosing a hill. "Because he said pink backpack like something in his life was small and worth protecting. Because Mr. Lewis said he heard a van and men say Hobson and move. Because my job is not to be a cursor moving where they tell me, it's to see and to report and to be wrong sometimes in ways that can be corrected by light." She exhaled. "Because when I said Hobson in the squad room, the air changed." I showed her the printouts, the spreadsheets, the adjusted columns, the email with AN. She read for a long time. "I don't know what this is," she said, "but I know a pattern when I see one." We coordinated like you do when you're not sure whether you're going to break something or save it. She would send me her full report once it was filed and signed. No leaking in draft because they love to say you're making things up if you do. I would file additional requests for EMS CAD data with timestamps, for contract terms, for internal communications. She would dig at the edges inside, where a person can still ask a question and pretend it was a joke when the wrong person hears. According to the union rep I spoke to, Elena was green but smart. According to a colleague who wouldn't go on record, she was too earnest and makes the rest of us look cynical. According to the patrol chatter captured on the same body cam file after she left the hospital that night, she drove around for 20 minutes in silence. I met Darius again in the way you meet the dead, through their words left in phones. Nina had given me access to his voicemail. "Note to self," he said in one, laughing like he knew he was talking to a future that might not include him. "Get a case for Jem's tablet, and call Mr. Lewis about Tuesday." In another, the Times. "It's not just shaving seconds. They delayed once on purpose because the guy was... They didn't want to expose people, they said. The sweeps. They say it's for sanitation. Who's sanitation? Who gets sanitized?" He stops, breathes. "If I don't call back, the drive is in the pink bag." He laughs at himself again. Dramatic. Officially, the city does not sweep. It conducts regular cleanings and offers services. According to the adjusted sheet, on nights with cleanings around Gramercy, response times were better than average. Or rather, better on paper. On paper, a lot of things look good. Some budgets are puzzles. The city contracted with Triton for EMS overflow after cutting the fire department's ambulance staffing. Triton had friends at City Hall. The councilman chairs the development committee. The development committee oversees improvements that require coordination. The email that said, "with upcoming activation around Gramercy," landed 2 days before sanitation trucks rolled through tent blocks to wash away what they couldn't account for. I called the Office of Public Integrity. They said they'd received no complaint from a Darius Cole. I told them I was holding his draft. They said they couldn't comment. I asked if they investigate time record manipulation. They said they investigate all credible allegations of wrongdoing. Credible is a nice word. It can be arranged. I asked for an interview with Councilman Hobson. His aide said scheduling was tight and would I like a statement. The statement arrived as a PDF with a header graphic of a skyline made of lines. We are deeply saddened by the loss of life, it said. We have no knowledge of any improper coordination. Our office has always advocated for both safety and economic revitalization. It had words like robust and holistic. None of them were pink or backpack. A second voicemail came that night. "This is Trent," the voice said. "You don't know me. I'm with Triton. I'm not supposed to talk. But the man in the garage was looking at data that makes us look bad. He called dispatch 2 days ago to ask about call codes. He asked about hold for sanitations. We don't have that code, but we have a button that pauses the clock. It says, on arrival, scene unsafe. We use it when there's a safety issue. Sometimes they tell us to use it even when the scene is not unsafe, to keep our averages university level. The activations are a sham. They clear people out for the cameras. They make us wait around the block so we don't get filmed. He was asking too many questions. He met someone at the garage a couple nights ago. Security. They told him to mind his own business. He didn't. I don't know what happened last night. I'm not saying they... He stopped. I'm saying people get hurt when the numbers matter more than the person. He hung up like a man who had learned to hear footsteps even when they weren't there. I played Trent's call for Elena. She nodded like a cut healing around a scab. Internal says there's no evidence of foul play, she said. But they haven't pulled the garage floor drain. They haven't checked van plates in the area. They haven't even talked to Mr. Lewis twice. They did talk to me twice. The second time, one of them said, "It's sad, but sometimes these things are lifestyle." Another said, "You've got a big heart, Ruiz. Don't let it mess up your head." She stared at her cup. I'm not the one whose head is messed up. Document everything, I said. Email yourself your notes. Date them. If they ask you to change a word, write down who asked and when and what they said. If you get scared, call me. I am scared, she said, and I'm mad. Does that still count? In my book, it's the whole thing, I said. At the building, they held a memorial in the courtyard because the church hall was booked by a condo association that doesn't understand irony. People spoke quietly. A pastor without a collar prayed. Mina held Jem, who wore a sweater too big and looked like she was keeping her back straight on purpose for 2 people. Mr. Lewis said words that made the air itself lean in. He was not what anyone says when they want to explain away, he said. He was a man who made a list and checked it because he believed if you wrote it down and showed it to someone with a braids the color of patience or a journalist with eyes that ask, something would change. He looked at me. I didn't write because my hands didn't want to. I still knew every word later. After, a woman in a city intake jacket came up and said, "We would like to offer counseling." Nina said, "I would like my brother back, but sure, I'll take someone to talk to who has to write down what I say." The woman looked tired in the way that says she'd show up in the middle of the night just to be a human being. "I'll come by tomorrow," she said. The next day, there was a change in the wind. The police report went public with no mention of Hobson. Elena texted. They removed it. The word. They took Hobson out. Supervisory review says unverified statement unintelligible. She sent me a photo of a sticky note. Don't be a crusader. I didn't ask who wrote it because I didn't want to hear the name I knew. I published the first piece the way my editor likes me to, calmly, like a person reporting the weather of a storm everyone's already soaked in. A man died in a garage. He said 3 words, "We know too," the headline read. Inside, a careful presentation. Darius's last words as captured by Bodycam. The pink backpack. The spreadsheets. The email from AN. the contract terms, the call from a paramedic who asked to be anonymous, the pattern, the cleanup. No accusation, just the puzzle pieces laid on a table. People can still see a boat when you show them a mast, a hull, a sail. They know water when they've been drowning. A day later, my phone exploded. Calls from council offices, calls from people who never pronounce my last name correctly until they need me to spell their quotes right. Calls from citizens who said, "I saw a van like that once," and "They swept my brother's block last week and told him to move like he was trash." Trent called again, voice higher and carrying a tremor. "They're saying someone leaked," he said. "They're checking our logins. I didn't want to be a hero, I just didn't want to be a liar." "Meet with me," I said. "Off-site, bring nothing. Wear nothing that says who you are. Don't park near the location, turn your phone off, and take out the battery if you can. We'll sit where there is noise." We met in a food court where tacos and noodles and the smell of bread baking argue politely. Trent looked like every man in a uniform on his day off who wants to be invisible but can't quite manage it. He wore a baseball cap and a jacket with a stitched name ripped off. "I was one of the good ones," he said, both mocking himself and insisting on truth. "That's what I told my wife. I'm not that guy," I told her. "I don't take the envelope, I don't look away." Then you find out the envelope is just air, and it's the people above you pumping. They say activate like it's a blessing. They say metrics like it's a prayer. They say seen unsafe like the number on the form is a victim. He drank nothing. His hands shook as if coffee already lived in them. "Listen, the garage is owned by a holding company. The holding company is tied to a development group. The development group is Hobson's. I'm not saying he called anyone to hurt anybody. I'm saying the culture trickles down like everyone says it does, and it gets on everything you touch. The city says cleanliness is safety. The company says speed is excellence. The numbers say we're beautiful. People with nowhere to go grow roots we pull up in the middle of the night." "Tell me about the pause button," I said. He described how CAD systems record reality, how there's a status for every step. When dispatch calls, the clock starts. We mark en route. We mark on scene. We mark with patient. We mark transport. We mark at hospital. It's straightforward until expectation meets reality. Reality is messy. A man is asleep. A woman refuses transport. A scene is complicated by a person trying to save face. The way to deal with that is honesty. The way they taught me? Options. They taught me to think about the average. Scene unsafe pauses the clock. If you were never weary, it would sound reasonable. A lot of nights we used it wrong. "Who told you?" He slid a napkin across the table with initials on it. A.N. "We had meetings. We didn't take notes because nobody said to. Someone says, we have to compete, we have to keep this contract. They say, we will be judged on our performance. They say the development schedule demands reduced visibility. They say, in nicer words, do what it takes. Don't be seen doing it." "And Darius?" I asked. "He came to a public training session having already read the manual," Trent said, his mouth pulling tight. "He asked a question about a code that doesn't exist. He asked, is there a code for wait until the truck with the city logo moves past so the camera can see the empty street?" He smiled in a way that made me think he still had hope. He told me later he was trying to make a case, not an enemy. He said we'd all benefit from a system where we weren't pretending to be fast while we were being slow with people's lives. He was either very naive or very brave, maybe both. He stood to leave, then sat back down like his knees had a different plan. "Do the right thing," he said to himself. My old man used to say that like it was easy. He didn't have emails. He put a hand on his hat. "They'll come for me." "I can shield you to a degree," I said. "I can corroborate with documents. I can turn you into a paramedic who requested anonymity out of fear for his job. But if this goes to court, anonymity becomes a coat that stops fitting." He nodded. "I'll think about it." He left like a man who had decided and just didn't know which decision he had made. That afternoon, the city posted a statement. We have asked Triton to provide all call logs for the past 6 months. We take any allegations of record manipulation seriously. We will also review our coordination protocols with the Department of Sanitation and private security contractors used by property owners. I filed more requests. Elena texted. Internal says I'm stepping out of my lane. I'm not sure what lane I'm in anymore. There's a point in stories like this where the people who would prefer you to be quiet realize you won't. They try a different strategy. A rumor appeared on a neighborhood forum that I was anti-police. Another said I was paid by rival developers. A third said I was related to the councilman's ex-wife. None of them were creative. I shrugged and wrote, the fact is, I'm pro the thing I said I was when I was 12 and someone asked me in an essay what I wanted to do when I grew up. I'm pro-truth. If that makes me anti-something else, that's the math. 2 nights later, Elena drove past the garage off-duty. It isn't in the report because she didn't write a report about going to a place and parking and turning off her lights and watching. She told me over coffee laced with fatigue. A van pulled in quiet. No plates. The pattern Mr. Lewis talked about. 2 men. Security jackets. Aegis. She looked at me. They're not city. They're a third-party firm for the property owners. You didn't engage, I said. It wasn't a question. I have a radio and a sidearm, she said flat. They have 2, and a system. I'm 1 person. I took notes. At 1:12 they drove out. At 1:20 a sanitation truck idled at the corner. At 1:25 a man with a backpack moved along the wall like he was trying to cast no shadow. At 1:27 the truck rolled forward. He turned around. He went the other way. She sipped coffee that had gone cold in the first minute. This is not about a man who lost control of himself. This is about control. On the 10th day after the garage, the Office of Public Integrity went public. We have opened an inquiry into the city's contract with Triton, they wrote. We have identified potential anomalies in CAD data. The anomalies that fit exactly inside a little pink backpack. Hobson held a press conference in a room with flags and a seal. He looked aggrieved that he was having to say he doesn't know anything about anything he doesn't want his name attached to. My office is committed to transparency, he said, which is something people say when they have learned not to blush. Any suggestion that I or my staff coordinated in any improper way with private entities to clear individuals is a disgusting lie. He made a face like someone smelling ammonia. I watched from the back. Elena watched on her phone on a 10-minute break. Nina watched while making Jem a sandwich and said, "That man is allergic to the word sorry." Mr. Lewis watched while mopping a floor you could eat off and said, "He got good at talking while carrying." He meant how Hobson could sound like he was holding all the pieces of the city at once. People like that are good at juggling. They are not always good at catching. I received footage from the garage's camera on level 2. It had 2 black gaps labeled signal loss. Between those breaks, a van could have entered and left level 3 a dozen times. On the footage that wasn't broken, I saw Elena arrive at 2:17, Mr. Lewis hovering like someone who knows you can hover and love at the same time. Paramedics slide aboard under a person you couldn't see beyond straps. I watched faces. I watched hands. I watched the way one paramedic patted a colleague's shoulder, not gently, but with a little shove you give a person when you want them to hurry up, because something in your head is keeping time that's not the clock. We kept going. I asked a judge to order the release of phone records between the councilman's office and the city's public safety office on the night in question. He demurred. The law has lots of words for maybe. I asked another judge for the city's bills paid to security contractors in the last quarter. It took a subpoena. Elena wore a wire in her heart, not literal but fierce, when she went to Internal Affairs and said, "I believe my report was altered. I believe a man's words were removed because they were inconvenient. The look she got in return would have been a baton if any of them could have used one. 2 weeks in, a man who called himself Alan met me under the freeway. "Aegis," he said when I asked where he worked. "We patrol the Gramercy properties nights. We aren't supposed to touch anyone. We are supposed to encourage voluntary compliance. But if someone lies down where they want to build a new sidewalk, we call it a hazard, and we call our boss, and our boss calls the city, and the city says sanitation is on the way. And then we wait until the trucks show up, and we look the other way, while someone's life fits into a plastic bag." He swallowed. "I never saw anyone hurt anyone on purpose. I did see a guy get edged, like pushed with a body until he stepped into a place where an accident was waiting to happen." He looked at his own shoes. "I saw a man like your guy get told, 'Move along.' He said he was meeting someone. He said he was getting proof. He said a name. That's when my partner said, 'Don't make this bigger than it is.'" "What name?" I asked. "Hobson," he said. I didn't say it out loud even then. I knocked on Anthony Nash's door. He opened it with the face of someone who knows exactly what this is and likes to pretend he doesn't. His house smelled like cedar and scotch. "We need to talk off record," he said. "On the record," I said. "Off gets you more," he said. He smiled, a little sad. "Nobody writes honest memos, Maya." "There are emails," I said, and he actually laughed. "Do you think I wrote those like a man who didn't know what a FOIA was?" he asked. "Do you think I don't have 3 layers of plausible between me and anything with verbs?" "What did you tell them?" "I told them to be good at their jobs," he said. "I told them to deliver. I told them to be seen doing good and unseen doing necessary. Necessity is a word I wish I didn't have to use this way." He rubbed his temple. "We were under pressure. The contract renewal is a fight. There are no heroes in procurement. You win by numbers." "People die in numbers too," I said. He looked at me as if he could see the place in me that won't stop doing this even when it unravels things I'd prefer to stay knitted. "Do you think I don't know that?" he asked quietly. "Do you think I sleep?" He gestured at a couch that looked like it cost more than my car. "Sometimes I lie there all night and stare at the ceiling and count minutes instead of sheep." He stared at the floor. "I didn't hurt anyone. I didn't tell anyone to hurt anyone. But I didn't tell them not to rearrange. I thought, what's a minute here or there if the average looks better and we keep our jobs and the service continues and no one loses their house because the company folds?" "A man died. That is larger than the numbers. Did you know Darius?" "I saw his name in an email," he said, eyes flicking up like they were careful about the truth but not allergic to it, asking for a meeting. I didn't respond. "Do you want me to tell you that I weighed the pros and cons and made a decision and now regret it? I ignored him because my day had too much in it and his name wasn't attached to a donor. That's the truth you can print." I printed it. The day the story ran, the mayor said there would be an audit. I have learned to hear the size of a word in the mouth that says it. Audit can be big or small. This one made a noise like a ladder missing a rung. Inside Internal Affairs, according to Elena's later notes, a captain told her, "You are out of your element." And she said, "I'm in a space where a man died and we don't know why." He said, "Not your job." She said, "It is exactly my job." He said, "This could end your career." She said, "Maybe my career isn't the most important thing." He wrote something. She watched the pen move and thought of how much power a black line can have. Another call from Trent landed in my inbox like a wilted leaf. "They found out," he said. "They say I violated policy. They put me on administrative leave. My wife is mad and says, 'Why did you have to be a hero?' I'm not a hero. I'm a guy who didn't want to be a liar." He sucked air. "I'll testify." 2 days later, the City Council's Public Safety Committee scheduled a hearing. There are rooms where people talk and it doesn't matter. This was not one of them. The seating was taken by 12:30 for a 1 o'clock start. Nina wore a dress that made her look like someone whose face refuses to choose between broken and bright and picks both. Jem held her hand and sat taller than most of the adults in the room. Mr. Lewis wore his one tie. Elena wore her uniform like a skin she had decided to keep even when it itched. Hobson wore a suit and a frown and a smile that took turns. According to the agenda, the hearing would cover response time anomalies, coordination protocols, and community impact. According to the air in the room, it would cover 1,000 untitled pages in a ledger nobody had dared to open. Trent went first, voice steady, hands still, as if he had practiced counting to 10 100 times before standing there. He described the pause button, the pressure, the emails, the culture. He paused. "We did not cause Mr. Cole's injuries," he said, careful. "But the way we handle nights like that creates darkness around the truth. And darkness grows things we don't want." A council member whose face I had only seen in fundraising emails said, "So you confess to purposeful deception to meet performance goals." She sounded pleased the way a person does when someone else's sin can be pinned like an insect. Trent did not look at her. Anthony Nash went next. He did not invoke the fifth. He invoked words like optics and efficiency and alignment. He said he never ordered anyone to falsify times. He said words like context and industry standard. He said no knowledge a lot. He said if mistakes were made, like the passive voice could swallow a city. Then Elena spoke. The room leaned. "I was the responding officer," she said, voice cool with heat under it. "I cannot tell you cause of death. I'm not a doctor. I can tell you what I observed, what I heard, what I reported. I can tell you my initial report included a dying man's words, Hobson, and pink backpack, and that this was removed in the supervisory review as unverified. I can tell you I have been cautioned not to crusade. I can tell you that when I mentioned the names of private contractors at that location, I was told it was outside my lane. My lane includes roads where people die and I arrive. That is the definition of an emergency response. That is my lane." She looked at Hobson. He did not look back. "I am willing to be wrong. Show me the facts. But if you are right, you won't need to erase my words." Mr. Lewis spoke next. He did not adjust the microphone. "I heard what I heard," he said. "Men in a garage, a name, the word move. If the truth is bright, why are there so many shadows?" He tapped the table with one finger like a metronome for the room's pulse. "I'm old enough to remember when they said urban renewal and built the freeway through our block. I am old enough now to know a lie when it puts on a tie." Nina held Jem's hand and spoke last among the people not paid by the city. "My brother," she said, and stopped because the word had to get past too much. My brother by choice was not a system. He was not a spreadsheet. He was a man with a list on his wall that said, 1. Breakfast with Jem on Saturday. 2. Study for EMT exam. 3. Call Mr. Lewis. 4. Talk to the person in charge about what is right. She held up the spiral notebook. "This is what you took when you say no foul play without playing anything. You took the part of him that believed if he wrote it down and told someone in authority, they would be exactly that. Authorities." She looked at Hobson and then at the council chair and then at the cameras. "If you're tired of hearing us, imagine being tired of living it." Hobson adjusted his mic. He said he was sorry for the loss. He said he never directed sweeps. He said he never coordinated with Aegis beyond ensuring safety. He said he did not know about Triton's times. He said he could not comment on ongoing investigations. He said his heart broke, which is a thing people say when they want you to feel the way feelings act like a substitution for consequences. He said the words the way a person says them who has learned to make the room quiet with voice alone. The chair asked for the video. They played the body cam. There was Elena kneeling in the rain. There was Darius saying pink, backpack, and then Hobson. There was a room full of powerful people watching a man's whisper cut through microphones and sink into the part of the brain where denial makes a last stand. I saw several faces register recognition and look around like they were hoping someone else would move first. The hearing continued for hours. It ended with a motion. Suspend Triton's contract pending audit. Refer potential falsification to the district attorney. Open an ethics inquiry into the councilman's coordination with private entities. Request records from Aegis. The motion passed unanimously, which does not mean courage so much as weather vane. In the days after, the narrative tried to shift. Hobson called a press conference to say he would cooperate fully. The mayor announced a task force. Triton sent out a glossy pamphlet showing children smiling at ambulances. Aegis scrubbed their website until it gleamed. Elena received notice. She was being reassigned to desk duty pending review. She texted me a photo of her badge placed carefully next to a coffee cup like an experiment in still life. They said I made waves, she wrote. I said you can't cross water standing still. At the concrete level where we live, people still sat in tents, and vans still came at night, and the lights still had the color of old coins. But there were more cameras. There were eyes on hands. There were eyes on numbers. There were eyes on eyes. 3 weeks after Darius died, an arrest was made. Not of a councilman, not of a CEO. 2 men in jackets with a private security company logo were charged with assault. The affidavit did not say they intended to kill anyone. It said they had physically guided an individual toward a ramp edge after a verbal confrontation escalated. It said the man fell hard. It said they did not render aid. It said they left. It said their shift supervisor texted, "Don't write this. I'll handle." The supervisor was charged with tampering. The company said it was a rogue incident. The company terminated contracts with the holding company that owned the garage. The holding company posted a statement about respecting all community members. Anthony Nash resigned. He wrote a letter that tried to be both explanation and apology. It said, "I believed I could fix things from the inside while benefiting from the things that were broken. I was wrong." It said, "I'm sorry." It said, "I will cooperate." It is a rare thing to read a man admitting he is not a villain by design and still responsible for damage. Trent testified before a grand jury. He is the kind of witness who will be punished for telling the truth even if the truth is validated, because institutions don't like being shown their guts. He will probably never get his job back. He will probably sleep better anyway in a year if he quits flinching every time a car door locks behind him. Elena faced an internal board. They told her she had violated protocol by speaking to the press. She told them she had violated a norm by refusing to be vague. They reduced her suspension. She went back on patrol. People in the neighborhood told her, "I saw you on TV," and "My cousin said he knows you from the garage," and "Be careful." She said, "I know." Nina was offered a seat on the task force. She took it. She said, "I will sit in your meetings and I will say his name until you stop flinching." She added a lock to the apartment door that clicks like a decision. The Office of Public Integrity's report arrived 3 months later. It reads like a story written by lawyers because it was. The words are careful. The sentence is short where you want them to be long and long where you want them to be simple. It says, Triton engaged in practices that had the effect of improving reported response times without corresponding improvements in actual times. It says, coordination with private security firms created conditions in which emergency personnel were discouraged from responding during certain operations. It says, there is no evidence that any elected official ordered illegal conduct. It says, multiple levels of accountability failed. It says, recommendations. It says, reforms. It says, oversight. It says, new reporting protocols. It does not say, justice. Because reports like this never do. They assume justice is the system itself existing. When you walk with a story long enough, it becomes a person you know. It becomes your voice, even when you lose it. What people want to ask me when the lights are off and their faces soften is whether we did any good. The answer is almost always some, and never enough. But some is a shape you can hold. Some people kept their jobs because a company lost its contract to fix itself. Some people slept one night longer because a van didn't come. Some clocks started telling time. On the anniversary of that night, we gathered on level 3 of the garage, with permission, if not grace. A mural had appeared in the months after, painted by teenagers with a ladder and an idea, of a man holding a notebook and a little girl with a backpack standing next to him, looking up at a sky the color of hope when it's still deciding what to wear. Someone had stenciled the words he said beneath. Pink backpack. The word Hobson was there, too, crossed out by a line someone drew later. Elena placed a single flower on a ledge the city had fixed, but not Jim Smooth, because time doesn't polish the places where we were wrong. Mr. Lewis wore his tie. Jem wore her sweater that was now a perfect fit, and held a small flag she had made from cardboard and a straw. It said, "Don't be scared." It said, "Count the buses." It said, "Darius." And I spoke into a microphone that made me nervous, even though this is how I breathe. According to the file, I began, because this is how I start when I'm trying to ground the world. At 02:17 a.m., on a rainy night, a man said 2 words and tried to say a third. We did not know him. Then we did. We learned that numbers move when no one looks, and they move people with them. We learned that caution tape can wrap around a story to keep truth out, as much as to keep people away. We learned that a rookie cop can be the one to keep your word from disappearing, and that a janitor can be a witness in the way only someone who cleans up after can be, and that a paramedic can be afraid and still brave, and that a sister can make a table into a desk into a courtroom by laying out pages and saying, "Please read." We learned that a man we underestimated is the reason we can say we learned any of this at all. My voice shook and then stopped shaking. I looked at Nina. She nodded. I looked at Elena. She gave me the little half-smile of someone who knows what it means to stand up with your knees trembling. I looked at Jem, who was making sure her flag didn't bump anyone. If you ask me what changed, I said, I can point to contracts and audits and hearings. I can point to a policy memo that says you cannot pause a clock without calling a supervisor who is on a recorded line. I can point to a new camera on level 3 and a sign that says no unmarked vehicles. I can point to a resignation letter that reads like a man trying to take a step toward the person he wanted to be. I can point to a mural a kid painted in a place the city says can't be used for anything, and now is a place we use to remember. Those are all true, but what changed first was that we listened to the smallest part of a dying man's voice and believed it. The mural glowed as the sun did its best to make the garage look like a stage where someone had just whispered the line that changes the play. Jim looked up at the sky as if it was waiting for the next bus. When I got home to write the last chapter of this story, I opened my laptop and saw the first line I wrote when this began. It was simple. It said, "He said pink backpack." It said, "He said Hobson." It said, "He died." It said, "We will not let that be the end of the sentence." I clicked publish. I remembered, with a wince and then a smile, the words on the billboard that night. How absurd and exactly right they felt in that moment where a life ended and a story began. Like and subscribe for more stories that challenge prejudice and celebrate courage. The sentence has become a promise to the person he was. He challenged our prejudice about who knows, who understands, who fixes. He made courage look like a notebook and a whisper. After, Elena and I sat in the quiet of a diner where the server calls everyone sweetheart and never gets your order wrong. I didn't become a symbol, she said, stirring sugar into coffee like the past settles if you sweeten the present enough. He did. She meant Darius. She meant the man on the ground who had the presence to turn his last words into directions. She meant the inversion of how this usually goes is that the person with the least power made the rest of us move. Nina texted me a photo later of Jem asleep under a blanket, the pink backpack hanging on a chair with no fear of being lost. "Tomorrow we go to the market," she wrote. "We buy peaches. We start our days with sweetness." I thought of the spreadsheets, the lines that lie, the lines that told the truth and weren't believed until they were. It is a relief when a story ends with a line you can live with. They rarely do. This one needs to close on a quote Darius wrote at the top of a page in his notebook in his careful, neat hand. "If you can carry one thing through the night, let it be each other." He underlined it. He drew a small bus beside it with 7 windows. He did not draw a van. There are still nights. There are still men in jackets with badges that aren't badges, and ladies who say they're just doing their jobs, and officers who have to choose between career and conscience, and journalists who run the tape back and hit pause and play and pause and play, and try not to miss the part where the truth peeks its head around the corner. There are still people in buildings where flyers curl because the staples are tired. But there is also this: a pink backpack on a chair, a mural on a wall, a rookie's report printed on paper that won't let the ink be unmade, an old man's testimony that puts a name in a room full of people who'd rather be anywhere else, a paramedic who decided fear wasn't a good enough reason to lie, a sister who turned grief into a map, a little girl counting buses by sound. That night on the garage ramp is still wet in my mind, rain ticking, a breath. "Garage," he said, as if making sure I knew where to start. "Hobson," he said, so we would know where to look. "Pink backpack," he said, so we would know what to carry. We carry it still. We carry him with it. Like and subscribe for more stories that challenge prejudice and celebrate courage. Not because a button changes the world, because attention does. And because somewhere right now, someone is in a garage thinking no one will believe them. We will.